Battle Through the Heavens, Episode 186. At the end of the previous episode, Xiaoyan uses his flames to fully refine the black vapors within the soul light cluster, revealing its pure, crystal-like essence. He then manifests his spiritual strength as a soul avatar to absorb the refined soul essence. As the pure energy pours into him, Xiaoyan's soul undergoes transformation, gradually forming a mysterious crystalline layer that signifies a powerful enhancement of his soul strength. Crash, crash. The soul light cluster slowly fluctuated, wave after wave of clear voices spoke as an unusually pure soul essence poured into Xiaoyan's soul. The face of the body that Xiaoyan's soul had turned into gradually revealed an intoxicated expression after this energy poured in. His soul seemed to have been immersed in a warm light. That feeling was just like a baby in a womb. Layer after layer of faint, mysterious crystals quietly began to appear on the surface of his soul. At a glance, his soul appeared just like an actual person, causing the soul to appear extremely mysterious. The interior of the soul light cluster contained an extremely frightening soul essence strength. These essence strength was formed after the Hall of Souls had extracted 1,000,000 souls. Before such a vast and mighty soul essence, even Xiaoyan ended up feeling as though he was extremely tiny. Crash. As more soul essence was absorbed by Xiaoyan, circular waves of invisible ripples began to form with him at the middle. This invisible ripple caused the area within 10,000 feet of the mountain to suddenly become completely quiet. All living creatures within the mountain forest sensed a pressure that originated from their souls. This pressure caused even the most ferocious magical beast within the mountain to lay on the ground in fear. They did not even dare let out a roar. Swoosh. Xiaoyan's training activity was quite intense. That fluctuation might appear invisible, but it possessed a pressure that one could not resist. Soon after the ripple spread, it was quickly detected by the many experts within the Falling Star Pavilion. Numerous figures hurried over, but they suddenly felt their heads become giddy when they were 10,000 feet away from the mountain Xiaoyan was training on. Some of them weren't able to keep their bodies stable and showed signs of falling from the sky. The many experts felt shock appear within their hearts. They hurriedly pulled back and only gradually felt better after leaving a 10,000-foot radius of the mountain. Their eyes were startled as they looked at the mountain with clouds lingering over it. This fellow's spiritual strength is really becoming terrifying. Yao Lao's group also appeared in the sky. Their eyes looked at the distant mountain with grave expressions. Even they could not resist that kind of spiritual pressure. Xiaoyan had far surpassed Yao Lao both in terms of Do Qi and his soul. Perfect heavenly state. Other than the ancestor, it has been over 1,000 years since someone within the small pill tower has reached this state. You have really accepted a good disciple this time around. Xiaoyan's achievements are enough to shame the younger generations from the Yao clan and even some of their old demons. The eyes of the first elder from the small pill tower were a little envious as he stared at the mountain where Xiaoyan trained. He softly sighed. His spiritual state had remained at the advanced heavenly state for 100 years, yet he had not been able to touch the perfect heavenly state. It was possible to tell just how difficult it was to raise one's spiritual state. Yao Lao slightly smiled. There was a joy that could not be hidden within his eyes. Xiaoyan's ability to reach this stage had exceeded even his wildest expectations. If one were to discuss talent, there were many people that were more talented than Xiaoyan, but Xiaoyan slowly persevered. He took one step at a time to a level that left those extremely talented individuals looking up. Achieving this level required some luck, perseverance, and many life and death experiences. Yao Clan, once I have the time in the future, I will definitely make a trip there with Xiaoyan. I do not have any other thoughts regarding this clan, but I must ensure that my parents' names are carved onto the clan tablet. This was the promise that I gave them when they died back then. Yao Lao placed both his hands behind him and looked at the distant western sky. His eyes contained some sadness that was rarely seen. His entire life had been quite bumpy. Fortunately, the heavens had bestowed him with hope at his most desolate moment. In that far-back mountain of the Shao clan in Wutan City in the distant past, he had placed his final bet on that tender youth. I wonder how long Xiaoyan will train this time around. Counting the days, the purifying demonic lotus flame will appear soon. Based on the information that I have obtained, the Hall of Souls has quietly started to move. They are targeting the purifying demonic lotus flame. Feng Zun, Ji, who was behind Yao Lao, revealed some news. Relax. He will wake up in time. Now, we will just have to quietly wait for him to break through. Additionally, issue an order that no one is allowed to enter the area within 10,000 feet from where Xiaoyan is training. Yao Lao slightly smiled. He did not continue to remain. Instead, his body moved, and he slowly returned to the main hall. Understood. One day after another passed amid this quiet training, but the spiritual fluctuation that spread from the mountain did not disappear. Instead, it gradually grew stronger, and after a month, almost the entire star realm was affected by that ripple. Hence, other than a couple of people, the others could only give up flying with bitter faces. They could only endure the spiritual pressure that pressed onto their backs by choosing to run on the ground. Yao Lao's group was helpless to deal with the pressure. Even they could only barely resist that spiritual pressure. So naturally, they did not have much strength left to help others. Moreover, this kind of pressure was considered another form of training to the Falling Star Pavilion's disciples. Just simply walking about could be considered training, with the upper echelons of the Falling Star Pavilion adopting such a mentality. The disciples of the Falling Star Pavilion ended up enduring the bitter spiritual pressure for an entire month. Although this spiritual pressure caused many to feel extremely terrible, they felt their spiritual strength vaguely grow after gradually getting used to the pressure. This caused many disciples to feel pleasantly surprised. They were not alchemists and naturally found very few opportunities to strengthen their spiritual strength. They were happy to be able to improve because of this special training. A strong spiritual strength would greatly aid one's training. After having tasted some benefits, no one continued to complain. Some of the talented disciples viewed the situation as a rare training experience. Not only did they try not to leave the star realm, they even began to try to slowly walk in the direction of the mountain where Xiaoyan was training. The disciples of the Falling Star Pavilion who seeked the pressure would experience their spiritual strength began to soar. After all, the spiritual pressure from the perfect heavenly state was not something just anyone could endure. While Xiaoyan was training, some of that soul essence began to scatter across the star realm under his control. If the Falling Star Pavilion disciples were lucky to absorb and merge with a piece, it would be no different than if a divine pill fell from the heavens. After the first batch of disciples experienced the benefits, an increasing number of disciples began to follow in their footsteps. In an instant, the entire star realm once again became lively. Tens of thousands of Falling Star Pavilion disciples slowly walked one step at a time toward the mountain where Xiaoyan was training. It was as though they were walking within a quagmire. Every step they took exhausted them. Of course, this exhaustion increased the disciples' training speed while bringing about some fatigue. After this desire to train spread, even some of the elders from the Falling Star Pavilion could not resist joining this kind of special training. Even Yao Lao's group was dumbfounded by the state of the star realm. They felt neither able to laugh nor cry. It was unexpected that Xiaoyan's would cause such a big commotion. Fortunately, this kind of training was an extremely rare experience for the disciples of the Falling Star Pavilion. After sensing the feeling of a perfect heavenly state soul, they would be able to avoid some unnecessary detours during their future journey. This strange atmosphere within the star realm continued for about 50 days. Only then did this atmosphere disappear as the spiritual pressure slowly diminished. The expressions of Yao Lao's group gradually became grave after this spiritual pressure, which had spread all over the star realm, diminished. They could sense a mighty world, like invisible ripple quietly gathering deep within the mountains. Xiaoyan is about to awaken. Yao Lao's group was aware that Xiaoyan's training was gradually approaching its end. Another 2 days passed while Yao Lao's group waited. Xiaoyan sat on the top of a mountain. There was a human figure that was covered by a strange crystal-like layer in front of him. The appearance of this figure was the same as Xiaoyan. That originally 5-foot large soul essence in front of this crystal human figure was only half the size of a head. Waves of extremely pure soul essence slowly drifted from it. The crystal human figure sat as still as a statue. It was a long while later before his tightly shut mouth was suddenly opened. A suction force surged, and the half-a-head large soul cluster rushed forward. It turned into a ray of light that entered the mouth of the crystal Xiaoyan. Bang! The body of the crystal Xiaoyan suddenly trembled after that soul light cluster entered his mouth. A dazzling light erupted from his body as an invisible world, like fluctuations swept in all directions like a storm. At this moment, dark clouds covered the sky while wild lightning danced. Rumble. Dark clouds covered the sky. Lightning flashed like silver snakes while thunder roared and echoed across the star realm. At the same time, an overwhelming invisible ripple quietly swept from the mountain like a storm. What a terrifying spiritual fluctuation. Yao Lao's group revealed grave expressions as they observed the unusual phenomenon in the sky that had been stirred by the vast and mighty spiritual strength. Yao Lao's eyes revealed an expression of shock. The spiritual strength of the perfect heavenly state was actually this powerful. Now, just Xiaoyan's spiritual strength alone will be able to fight against a two-star Dosheng. The first elder of the small pill tower fondled his beard and slowly stated. Some surprise appeared in Ziyan's eyes by the side. The ancient void dragon's physical body was incomparably strong, but their spiritual strength was unbelievably weak. Even someone as strong as her still felt a little shaken by such a spiritual fluctuation. It is rumored that if one advances to the legendary Dai state, one's soul will be indestructible. Even if one's soul is forcefully shattered, the lingering soul seed will gradually gather together, allowing one to be reborn. This perfect heavenly state might be inferior to the Dai state, but its strength is definitely not something the advanced heavenly state can compare with. Yao Lao spoke in a grave voice. Once one's soul reaches the perfect heavenly state, it is no different than one's physical body. It is possible to separate one's soul when fighting so that it could join hands with one's physical body. The cooperation between those two would be unmatchable. One's strength would also soar many times over. The first elder from the small pill tower laughed. His laughter contained some envy. Before advancing to the perfect heavenly state, one's soul will still appear a little weak. Normally speaking, no one would summon it out. After all, the damage one would receive if one's soul was hurt was simply too great. However, upon stepping into the perfect heavenly state, one's soul will be able to exist in another form. Moreover, the strength that it possessed would not be inferior to the actual body. The strength of its defenses would leave one speechless. It would be extremely powerful when joining hands with the actual body in a fight. The perfect heavenly state might still be within the heavenly state, but it was completely different than the advanced state. From a certain point of view, one could be said to have gained an additional companion with unmatchable cooperation once one's spiritual strength reaches the perfect heavenly state. This fighting companion's strength was determined by one's own strength. In other words, it was somewhat similar to a Dao skill like the 3000 lightning illusory body, which could form an avatar, but the strength and other aspects of the avatar formed by the 3000 lightning illusory body could not compare with the body formed when one's soul reached the perfect heavenly state. The invisible spiritual strength quietly rippled from the dense clouds like waves of water. The entire star realm had been reflected into Xiaoyan's mind. At this moment, he was able to sense the slightest emotional fluctuation of everyone within the star realm. Xiaoyan was aware of the thoughts of many individuals through these emotional fluctuations alone. This was another form of control, an insight into the hearts of others. Such a technique was achieved by Xiaoyan with his perfect heavenly state soul. Is this the perfect heavenly state? A low mutter sounded within Xiaoyan's heart. He could clearly sense the difference between his current self and his previous self. If the spiritual strength in the past were to be described as a growing youth, his current soul could be considered an experienced person at the prime of his life with a sharp weapon in his hand. Swoosh, swoosh, with a thought from Xiaoyan. Invisible spiritual fluctuation spread like floodwater. In the blink of an eye, they had extended beyond the star realm before they spread apart with lightning, like speed. Within a short 1 minute, the many happenings within a 500-kilometer radius of the falling star pavilion was reflected into Xiaoyan's mind. Moreover, the speed of this spiritual fluctuation was continuing to grow instead of reducing. The invisible fluctuation swept over a countless number of experts, but other than some of those experts with sharp senses, who felt their skin turn slightly cold, the remaining individuals, including some who had reached the peak of the Dozun class, were unable to sense anything despite being monitored by another. Xiaoyan's spiritual fluctuation spread beyond 500 kilometers. He even met some strong souls along the way. He was even able to detect some souls from deep within the sparsely populated mountains observing him. Clearly, they had discovered his spiritual fluctuation. The central plains was indeed filled with many hidden experts. The spiritual fluctuation swiftly spread. Xiao Yan was about to withdraw it when he suddenly sensed a fervor being emitted from deep within his soul. His mind moved, and the spiritual fluctuation headed in the direction that had stirred his soul with lightning. Like speed, the speed at which the spiritual fluctuation spread far surpassed that of one's physical body. Within a short moment, Xiao Yan's soul had reached the source that had stirred the heated feeling. That place was filled with mountains and hills. There was an extremely distorted feeling in the air above it. White light was vaguely seeping out of the distorted space. An extremely powerful, searing pain was suddenly emitted from deep within his soul when the spiritual fluctuation touched this cream. White light. This sudden searing pain caused Xiao Yan to become somewhat dull. There were 5 types of heavenly flame merged within his soul. An ordinary heavenly flame would not be able to cause him to feel even the slightest heat, much less a searing pain. Boom, boom, boom. While Xiao Yan was feeling shocked, the mysterious light cluster in his mind, which had been obtained from the purifying demonic lotus flame ancient map, violently shook at this moment. This violent movement caused Xiao Yan to suddenly comprehend something. He felt incredibly shocked as he looked at the distorted space in the air. His heart muttered, "This place is the location where the purifying demonic lotus flame will descend." Only the purifying demonic lotus flame was able to cause the mysterious light cluster in the back of Xiao Yan's mind to react. Only the purifying demonic lotus flame was able to cause Xiao Yan, who had the protection of 5 types of heavenly flames, to feel a searing pain. Bang! The surrounding space suddenly churned while Xiao Yan was looking at the distorted space with great shock in his heart. An extremely powerful spiritual fluctuation suddenly surged out of the space. It violently collided with Xiao Yan's spiritual fluctuation. This sudden terrifying clash caught Xiao Yan off guard. A buzzing sound continued to reverberate within his mind. He even felt somewhat giddy. Who is it? Xiao Yan's reaction was quite quick. He recovered an instant after having suffered the attack and quickly shrank his soul. At the same time, a furious roar was emitted. Since the attacker was able to cause him to suffer some damage, it was obvious that the other party's spiritual strength was not any weaker than his. "You are that young fellow from the Xiao clan, Xiao Yan." Xiao Yan's heart was slightly startled upon hearing the faint voice being emitted from empty space. At the same time, Xiao Yan emitted a spiritual fluctuation. "Who are you? Why have you attacked me?" It seems that the soul essence collected by the manhole has already been swallowed by you. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for you to reach the perfect heavenly state. You are indeed worthy of being someone who has caused my Hall of Souls to fail many times. You really embody some of Xiao Xuan's style. That mysterious person did not reply to Xiao Yan as his calm voice was slowly transmitted into Xiao Yan's heart. "You are the chief of the Hall of Souls." An intense fluctuation was suddenly emitted from within Xiao Yan's soul. Who else within the Hall of Souls, other than the Hall Chief, who had yet to show himself, was able to train his soul to such a level? Originally, I was planning to wait until the purifying demonic lotus flame appeared before settling some problems. But since you have dared to peep at the location where the demonic flame will be born, you should follow this chief back to the Hall of Souls. The soul essence of my Hall of Souls is not something that anyone can enjoy." After that indifferent voice sounded, Xiao Yan suddenly sensed everything around him seemed to have turned into a prison. Even his soul had become sluggish. "Your spiritual strength is indeed very powerful. Unfortunately, your actual body is too weak." The empty space fluctuated as a large black hand, which was a couple of 1,000 feet in size, formed in the sky. It reached for the space where Xiao Yan's soul was located. "Hun Mi Sheng, isn't it a little overboard for you to attack someone from the younger generation, given your status?" A faint elderly voice suddenly sounded while the large black hand was attacking Xiao Yan. A similarly large hand was formed in the sky, and the two suddenly clashed against each other. A terrifying spiritual storm expanded as the restriction of the surrounding space was shattered. "Old ghost, you are indeed also monitoring the purifying demonic lotus flame." The Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls immediately cried out after his attack was blocked. "I merely do not wish for it to land in the hands of your Hall of Souls." That elderly voice slowly replied, "Leave this place." An elderly voice sounded within Xiao Yan's heart the moment the spatial prison was shattered. Xiao Yan sensed his soul seemed to have been violently pushed. A thunder-like sound appeared beside his ear. Within a short moment, he had withdrawn to his mind. His head revealed some cold sweat. A cow was slowly feeding on the grass in a field thousands of kilometers from the falling star pavilion as Xiao Yan's soul returned to his body. There was a man in his teens on the back of the cow. He slowly lifted his head and looked into the distant north-western sky. An old and experienced expression, which seemed to have seen through everything in the world, filled those clear eyes. The birth of the demonic flame will involuntarily lead to an earth-shaking fight. The youth herding the cow sighed with a tender voice. He swung his whip, and the cow slowly headed into the distance, on the top of a mountain. Xiao Yan opened his eyes with a cold sweat all over his body. His eyes were filled with a grave expression. He did not expect his roaming soul to lead him to meet that elusive Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls. If that mysterious expert did not help, it would have been a little difficult for Xiao Yan to escape. Although Xiao Yan was not inferior to that chief of the Hall of Souls in terms of a spiritual collision, the chief was right in saying that there was too much of a gap between Xiao Yan's and his actual strength. The chief of the Hall of Souls is likely even greater than Ziyan. Xiao Yan slowly exhaled. He suppressed his rapidly beating heart. The matter from earlier was far too dangerous. That person was indeed worthy of being the chief of the Hall of Souls. Just his soul alone could cause Xiao Yan to feel helpless. However, I wonder just who that mysterious expert is. I don't think I am acquainted with such a strong person. Why has he aided me? Xiao Yan knit his brow. He finally managed to gain an idea of just how many hidden experts there were within the Central Plains after this spiritual tour. He had nearly met with mishap even with his perfect heavenly state soul. Since that mysterious expert was willing to lend me a hand, he is likely a friend rather than an enemy. If I can discover his identity, he might be a great help. Xiao Yan's eyes flickered. That mysterious expert from earlier was clearly unafraid of the chief of the Hall of Souls. He did not even end up in a disadvantage when they clashed. Xiao Yan was even able to detect some fear in the Hall Chief's cry. There were not many people within this continent who could frighten an expert like the Hall of Souls chief. Xiao Yan frowned and mused for a moment, but it was to no avail. He could only shake his head. He lifted his head and looked to the north, west. An extremely hot flame danced within those black eyes of his. He had managed to gain a lot from this spiritual tour. Not only did he meet the chief of the Hall of Souls, he had also discovered the location where the demonic flame would appear. That distorted space sealed the purifying demonic lotus flame inside. However, from the way the chief of the Hall of Souls and that mysterious experts had appeared in that area, it was obvious that these peak experts had already detected it. Hence, they had been standing guard. Meeting with the Hall of Souls chief this time around seemed as though Xiao Yan was delivering himself to be captured. From the looks of the damaged appearance of that space, it is obvious that the purifying demonic lotus flame is planning to break free. Perhaps it will descend on this world in the next few days. Xiao Yan gently rubbed his hands together. This collision with the chief of the Hall of Souls had allowed Xiao Yan to understand his strength. The current Xiao Yan would not have a chance of victory if he met with him. Hence, Xiao Yan needed to obtain the purifying demonic lotus flame at all cost. With Xiao Yan's current strength, his strength would only soar quickly if he swallowed the purifying demonic lotus flame. At that moment, he would not even need to fear the chief of the Hall of Souls. Though, behind the chief of the Hall of Souls was the even more terrifying Hun clan. How could Xiao Yan clash with the Hun clan if he could not even deal with the people from the Hall of Souls? It should be known that this frightening faction had even killed his ancestor Xiao Xuan. I must definitely obtain the purifying demonic lotus flame. Xiao Yan clenched his fist. His hand suddenly touched his forehead, that mysterious cluster of light in his head, which had been obtained from the ancient map, had once again become calm after his soul returned to his body. Even with Xiao Yan's perfect heavenly state spiritual strength, he was unable to enter that light cluster. This thing seems to have reacted to the purifying demonic lotus flame. It is likely something that the legendary purifying demon Lotus Saint left behind back then. I wonder what it is used for. Xiao Yan slightly frowned. He had spent a lot of effort to gather all of the map fragments only to obtain a secret that many had already known. If this light cluster had no other use, Xiao Yan would feel the impulse to drag the purifying demonic Lotus Saint out to curse at him. Huh. Xiao Yan's fingers helplessly rubbed his head. He returned these thoughts to his heart and stood up. A thought passed through his mind, and the spiritual strength in his brow surged out. It agglomerated into a like human figure. Xiao Yan looked at the spiritual figure in front of him, who shared the same appearance as him. Xiao Yan's face was also filled with life. It did not appear dull or sluggish. Both of them looked just like twins from a distance. Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan smiled toward Xiao Yan in front of him as he extended his hand. Please take good care of me. The Xiao Yan formed by Xiao Yan's soul also smiled. He extended his hand and took Xiao Yan's hand. This scene appeared extremely comical and a little strange. Ah, there are actually two Xiao Yans. A slight fluctuation appeared in the sky as a group of people appeared. They looked at the two figures grasping hands and were startled. Ziyan let out an exclamation. She hurried down with a curious face and grabbed the two of them for a closer inspection. A spiritual avatar that looks exactly like one's actual body. The perfect heavenly state does live up to its reputation. The first elder from the small pill tower slowly landed. He looked at Xiao Yan's avatar, which was filled with life, as he involuntarily praised. Moreover, its strength is not any weaker than the original body. Any cooperation between the two can also be described as perfect. The two complement each other and possess a relatively frightening strength. Yao Lao fondled his beard as he spoke with a smile. Xiao Yan grinned. He waved his hand and the spiritual avatar in front of him disappeared. It turned into spiritual strength that rushed into Xiao Yan's brow. Ha. You have finally completed your training. Based on the time, the purifying demonic lotus flame will appear in the world soon. We are still not certain where it will appear. However, when the time comes, it will definitely be an earth-shaking event. Feng Zun, Ji laughed. I am already aware of the location where the demonic flame will appear. Xiao Yan slightly grinned. He hesitated for a moment after seeing Feng Zun's stunned face. Finally, he said, I discovered it when my soul was roaming around earlier. Additionally, I made contact with the chief of the Hall of Souls. The expressions of everyone present changed slightly upon hearing this information. Many pairs of eyes gathered on Xiao Yan. The chief of the Hall of Souls was an extremely powerful existence and the most mysterious person within the Hall of Souls. His strength could split the sky and cut through the earth. He was outrageously strong. What happened? Yao Lao asked with a grave expression. Xiao Yan spread his hands and roughly explained the incident earlier. It looks like the Hall of Souls is indeed targeting the purifying demonic lotus flame. They are already standing guard. Yao Lao slightly frowned. He mused for a moment before speaking. I am unable to guess the identity of that mysterious expert. However, he is likely a friend since he has helped you. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. You need not pay much attention to the matter regarding the chief of the Hall of Souls. The appearance of the purifying demonic lotus flame will be an earth-shaking great event. At that time, those ancient clans will definitely intervene. The Gu clan will not be an exception. There will naturally be other experts dealing with the chief of the Hall of Souls at that time. All we need to do is wait for an opportunity to subdue the purifying demonic lotus flame. Yao Lao clenched his hand. A jade bottle appeared in it. A pill cloud lingered within the jade bottle, and a dark red medicinal pill quietly floated on it. Waves of an unusually icy, cold aura were slowly emitted from within the jade bottle, causing some flakes of ice to fall from the sky within 100 feet of this bottle. This is the 9-yin yellow spring pill. During your 2 months of training, both First Elder and I joined hands to successfully refine it. Xiao Yan received the jade bottle, and a chill rose from his feet to his heart. He exhaled a long breath. His breath had just left him when it turned into an icy pillar that fell with a cracking sound. It is indeed the 9-yin yellow spring pill. I have troubled teacher and First Elder. Xiao Yan felt some joy as he immediately thanked those two. The 9-yin yellow spring pill was a Tier 9 treasure pill. It was likely that it was not easy to refine even with both the First Elder and Yao Lao working together. Yao Lao smiled and quickly said, Now that everything is ready, all we need to do is to wait for the purifying demonic lotus flame to be born. Whether we will be able to obtain it will depend on fate. After all, this purifying demonic lotus flame has not been subdued by anyone, even when it appeared in this world in the past. Xiao Yan quietly nodded. He was aware of how difficult it was to subdue the purifying demonic lotus flame. Regardless of what the case was, he needed to do his best. Xiao Yan, who had successfully trained his soul to the perfect heavenly state, gradually became free during the subsequent days. Spies from the alliances had also been dispatched. They reached the location Xiao Yan's soul had found and began an investigation. Of course, the Sky Mansion Alliance was not the only one taking such actions. Those ancient sects and factions across the Central Plains, who usually did not reveal themselves, had all placed their focus on that area. The appearance of the purifying demonic lotus flame had stirred most of the open or secretive factions who had the ability to snatch it. That mountain forest, which was usually deserted, had become extremely lively. These hidden operations continued for another 4 days. Xiao Yan, who was seated on a towering tree in the Falling Star Pavilion, suddenly opened his eyes. He lifted his head and looked into the distant sky. 2 moons, one above and one below, had suddenly appeared. At the same time, 9 bright stars in the sky slowly shifted in front of numerous pairs of stunned eyes. Finally, they formed a straight line. 2 moons simultaneously appearing, 9 stars aligning, a world tide rising, the demonic flame descending. The purifying demonic lotus flame had finally descended the world at this moment. Bang! The moment the 9 bright stars in the sky were aligned, the entire world suddenly emitted a powerful energy fluctuation. A strange fog spread from the emptiness as a sound wave vaguely spread across the world. The world tide. It is indeed the same as what was stated on the ancient map. Xiao Yan slowly stood up on the top of the tree. He lifted his head, looked at the faint fog that covered the land, and muttered to himself, swoosh. A couple rays of light swiftly rushed over from the star realm while Xiao Yan was muttering to himself. They appeared beside Xiao Yan in a couples of flashes. These rays of light were Yao Lao's group. The demonic flame is about to descend on the world. Yao Lao landed beside Xiao Yan and spoke in a grave voice. Xiao Yan nodded. Countless experts would be rushing to location of the purifying demonic lotus flame from tomorrow on. Even though many people knew that they did not possess the ability to subdue the purifying demonic lotus flame, all of them would adopt a hopeful attitude. After all, anyone who could obtain the purifying demonic lotus flame and refine it would undoubtedly experience a great leap in strength. At that time, one would even be able to easily win against an expert who far surpassed one's strength. That temptation was just too much to resist. "When shall we get moving?" Yao Lao asked. Xiao Yan hesitated for a moment upon hearing this question. His expression suddenly changed just before he could speak. He suddenly lifted his head as he looked at the night sky to the north. West, an intense light was emitted from the distant sky at that moment. This light contained an extremely terrifying temperature. It spread like a wave and reached an unbelievably large area. It was still possible for one to feel a heat rising within one's heart within the Falling Star Pavilion. This is, the purifying demonic lotus flame has appeared in this world. Yao Lao sensed this unusual phenomenon. He inhaled a gentle breath of cool air. He had not expected this demonic flame to break its seal with such anxiety. Bang, bang! Xiao Yan's hand gently pressed on his forehead. The mysterious light cluster suspended in his head had once again formed an intense ripple at this moment. Xiao Yan exhaled a long breath of air. A thought passed through his mind as he gradually suppressed the unusual movements of the light cluster. With his perfect heavenly state spiritual strength, he might not be able to enter the cluster of light, but it was not much of a problem for him to suppress it. We will leave now, regardless of what the situation is like. We should head over to take a look before deciding what to do. Xiao Yan spoke in a deep voice. His eyes flashed after suppressing that light cluster. The speed at which the demonic flame had appeared was much faster than he had anticipated. It was likely that various experts were beginning to hurry over. Xiao Yan's group needed to swiftly reach that place. Even if they did not intend to act immediately, it would be best to gain a clear view of the situation as soon as possible. Yao Lao was startled, but he did not say anything more. A long whistle was emitted from his mouth. That whistle spread over the well-lit star realm as many figures began to hurriedly fly over from various parts of it. Finally, they floated in the sky. The people right in front of this group was the first elder of the small pill tower, Ancestor Huo Yun, and the flower sects Fairy Qing and Fairy Hua. "This trip is extremely critical. I already invited them over 2 days ago." Yao Lao smiled as he informed Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan titled his in acknowledgement at this moment. Each additional person was more strength, meaning an additional chance of success. Everyone, this trip is fraught with danger. If anyone meets with danger that you are no match for, please withdraw. The most important thing is to preserve one's strength. Xiao Yan spoke in a deep voice. The experts present were considered the elite forces of the alliance. If their losses were too great, it would severely hurt the core of the alliance. Snatching the purifying demonic lotus flame might be important. But there was no need for unnecessary sacrifices in order to obtain it. Understood, the many human figures in the sky cried out in unison upon hearing Xiao Yan's orders. Xiao Yan's strength and reputation within the alliance was not inferior to Yao Lao's prestige. No one dared to go against his words. Let's go. Xiao Yan did not utter any unnecessary words upon hearing them agree. He waved his hand, and his body turned into a ray of light that swiftly rushed out of the star realm. After which, they rushed toward the location where the demonic flame had appeared with lightning-like speed. A large group shot through the sky behind them. Large groups of people were flying from various sects and factions across the central plains while the falling star pavilion was maneuvering their people. After which, every group was accompanied by the buzzing sound of rushing wind as they flew through the sky a batch at a time. Their destination was the north-western region of the Central Plains. Within a short night, the entire Central Plains had turned into a mess. Swoosh, the loud sound of wind being split, suddenly blew across the sky as a large group of people flew over from the distant horizon. We are entering the area 500 kilometers from where the demonic flame has appeared. Xiao Yan lifted his head. His eyes observed the distant area in front. A glaring light was being emitted like a dazzling sun in that direction. Wave after wave of terrifying heat came pouncing over as they approached. Even though those present in this trip were all extremely strong individuals, many of them were still covered in perspiration. It is indeed worthy of being the purifying demonic lotus flame. Just the heat that is being emitted will make it difficult for 6-star and above elite Daozuns to resist. Xiao Yan's eyes swept over the people behind him. His brow was involuntarily knit. A 6-star elite Daozun could be considered a top-tier expert across the continent. However, this strength was barely able to resist the remnant heat of the purifying demonic lotus flame. From this heat, one could tell just how terrifying the purifying demonic lotus flame was. Xiao Yan, we have met at least 10 groups along the way. Their aim is clearly the purifying demonic lotus flame. It seems like there will be an earth-shaking fight over it this time around. Ziyan's pretty eyes swept around her as she spoke. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. They had indeed met quite a number of groups with the same intentions along the way. But he did not pay much attention to them. Although those people were quite strong, they were still a little too weak to snatch the purifying demonic lotus flame. I wonder whether the Han clan and the other ancient clans have already reached. Xiao Yan's eyes scanned the area far in front of him as this thought flashed through his heart. He once again waved his hand and cried out in a deep voice, "Increase our speed." The 500-kilometer distance could be covered by experts like Xiao Yan within a couple of minutes. Although there was a large group delaying him, the entire group gradually reached the mountainous region where the demonic flame had descended around 20 minutes later. The lush green mountain range had completely vanished. Only a cream-white desert remained. A terrifying heat radiated from the ground, causing the area within a 500-kilometer radius to reveal a distortion. What a terrifying flame this purifying demonic lotus flame is. It has actually incinerated such an enormous mountain range into a desert. Yao Lao involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air as he looked at the enormous desert that appeared in front of him. His face was filled with shock. Xiao Yan slightly nodded. A flame surged from his body and wrapped around everyone from the alliance. Only then was the searing pain on his skin reduced, after which he lifted his head and looked at the distant sky. That area had already been split apart. A cream-white light broke from the space and poured down. The light emitted a terrifying temperature that even the soul was unable to endure. The space that sealed the purifying demonic lotus flame has already been broken. However, the demonic flame has not appeared. It is probably still in that realm. This cream-white light is merely its lingering heat. Xiao Yan softly explained after seeing this scene. Lingering heat. Even with Ziyan's strength, her face involuntarily changed upon hearing these words. A little lingering heat was able to incinerate the mountain range and turn it into a desert. Just how frightening would it be if they entered that realm? Swoosh, swoosh. Soon after Xiaoyan's group appeared in this desert, waves of the sound of rushing wind were transmitted from every direction. Numerous figures came to a halt far from that broken space. Their eyes contained some horror as they stared at this cream, white desert. They were aware that this place had originally been a mountainous region that had been filled with life before this night. From the looks of it, it seems that we must enter that realm in order to obtain the purifying demonic lotus flame. Yao Lao stared at the space above for a long time before speaking. There is no need to hurry. This realm is fraught with all sorts of danger. We are not qualified to be the first to step forward. Xiaoyan shook his head. Even he could sense an immense danger. If this group of theirs were to hastily enter, hardly any of them would be able to escape alive. Yao Lao nodded. Being an alchemist, he was naturally able to detect just how frightening it would be within that broken space. Qi, the space near them suddenly fluctuated while Xiaoyan's group carefully waited. A dense black fog seeped out in all directions from this fluctuation, a frightening aura that caused one's expression to alter. Quietly spread, it immediately attracted all the eyes present. Many pairs of eyes glanced at the spot where the black fog had appeared. Finally, the black fog slowly scattered, and a couple of human figures appeared in front of everyone's sight. That is, the chief of the Hall of Souls. Yao Lao's group narrowed their eyes as they looked at the black-robed human figure leading the group. That figure possessed a frightening aura. The Do Qi within their bodies began to quietly circulate. 3 figures slowly surfaced from the black fog. One of them was wearing black robes. There was nothing special about his face. He appeared just like an ordinary person as a pair of rough hands rolled from his sleeves. But it was this ordinary figure that caused most people present to cease breathing. Their eyes were grave and afraid, Chief of the Hall of Souls. These 4 simple words held a prestige that no one in this Central Plains could compare with. Even though this mighty name had been accumulated through years of bloodshed, not a single faction other than the new Sky Mansion Alliance dared to openly display their hostility to them. Part of the reason for this might be due to the Hun clan, but the Hall of Souls also possessed a deterrence that belonged to them in the distant past. The chief of the Hall of Souls had once exterminated dozens of sects overnight. Blood flowed like a river that night, while corpses were scattered all over the land. 5 experts who had reached the 2nd star of the Dao Sheng class had fallen miserably to his hands. That night established the ferocious reputation of the Hall of Souls. It also led to the Hall of Souls being the overlord of the Central Plains. Even the Pill Tower did not dare to easily clash with him at this moment. This mighty person, whose fierce reputation was once infamous across the entire Central Plains, was quietly floating in the sky. His eyes were just like a meditating old monk, since they did not reveal the slightest fluctuation. Regardless of whether the gazes from his surroundings were filled with fear or hatred, he never shifted his eyes. Chief of the Hall of Souls. Xiaoyan's eyes slightly narrowed. His gaze roamed the figure. The faint spiritual fluctuation that was emitted from within the chief's body was the same as the powerful soul Xiaoyan had met a couple of days ago, while Xiaoyan was observing the chief of the Hall of Souls. The chief of the Hall of Souls seemed to have detected something and slowly turned his head. Those ancient rippleless, like eyes landed on Xiaoyan. He observed Xiaoyan before speaking in an indifferent voice. The fallen Xiao clan has actually produced someone with such talent. This is a failure on the part of my Hall of Souls. Hall Chief, this brat is too cunning. Although we never viewed him seriously in the past, the experts we dispatched each time were all more than enough to kill him. But each time around, he always overcame the danger. Moreover, his strength also ended up soaring. A human figure behind the chief of the Hall of Souls spoke in a respectful manner. He slowly lifted his head and revealed half of his face. It naturally belonged to the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls. In time to come, this fellow might end up becoming another Xiao Xuan. The chief of the Hall of Souls ignored the deputy chief's words and continued to speak in a calm voice. His voice remained calm, appearing a little strange and mysterious. The deputy hall chief widened his mouth after hearing the chief of the Hall of Souls give Xiaoyan such a high evaluation. He looked at the figure next to him who had yet to speak and dryly laughed. Regardless of how strong that brat is, he is not be stronger than junior clan head. Even if Xiaoyan will be the next Xiao Xuan, It should be known that Xiao Xuan's fate was not a good one. Ha! An undefined laugh was emitted from the nostrils of the Hall of Souls' chief. He slowly shook his head and softly said, "That's hard to predict." He possesses 5 types of heavenly flames, namely the green lotus core flame, falling heart flame, sea heart flame, bone-chilling flame, and the 3000 burning flame. Heavenly flames are far too wild and violent. They will definitely try engulfing each other upon contact, but he is able to deal with them peacefully. This should be an effect of his chi method. That human figure slowly lifted his head while the chief of the Hall of Souls looked at him. Light landed on his face, revealing the face of a man that was in his 30s. The face appeared quite young, but there was no expression on it. Joy and sadness were absent. It gave one the feeling that all his features were stiff. Of course, the most eye-catching feature was this person's eyes. Both of his eyes were dark, black. They were a kind of extremely pure black. There were no whiteness in his eyes, only a cluster of ink. Like blackness was present, looking from a distance, it appeared as though 2 black beads had forcefully been inserted into his eyes. A chill would rise within one's heart upon being looked at by that pair of eyes. This person turned his head and observed Xiaoyan from a great distance. His voice was soft and cold. Based on what I am aware of, Yao Chen once obtained a mysterious qi method that could merge heavenly flames from that ancient remains. Xiaoyan is practicing that qi method. The reason he is able to swiftly advance to this level is because of that qi method. Of course, one must also not underestimate his ability. Even if an ordinary person practices this qi method, that person might not end up better than him. After having merely observed Xiaoyan from afar, this person was not only able to see through the heavenly flames within Xiaoyan's body, he was also able to guess the origin of the qi method that Xiaoyan practiced. His observation skills would cause one to break out in cold sweat. He is a very difficult opponent to deal with. However, I should be able to kill him. The black-robed man slowly stated, "Haha, that's only natural. Although Junior Clan Head is merely an advanced 2-star Do Sheng, even I would not be able to defeat you. It is an easy matter for you to kill the initial 2-star Do Sheng Xiaoyan. Looks like the position of Clan Head of the Hun Clan will belong to Junior Clan Head in the future." The deputy chief of the Hall of Souls smiled as he tried to curry favor. The black-robed man curled his mouth upon hearing these words. However, he looked at the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls and said, "You should listen to what the Hall Chief is thinking before uttering these words. Junior Clan Head is thinking too much. The Clan Head has an overwhelming strength and has been in control of the Hun Clan for thousands of years, without showing any sign of tiring. It is too early to talk about these matters." The Hall Chief faintly smiled before he shook his head and replied. The black-robed man gently lifted his eyelids, but did not continue discussing this somewhat taboo topic. His eyes shifted away from Xiaoyan as he looked at the shattered space. He asked, "When should we act?" Wait for the purifying demonic lotus flame to break the seal. This will make it lose quite a lot of energy. We will act once it is about to break the seal." The rough, large hands of the Hall of Souls chief crossed each other as he spoke. The black-robed man slightly nodded. His pure black eyes once again glazed at Xiaoyan in the distance before he shut his eyes. Is that the chief of the Hall of Souls? He is indeed frightening. Ancestor Hu Yun and the rest withdrew their gazes. Their faces were filled with a grave expression as Ancestor Hu Yun made a comment. Xiaoyan slightly nodded. Only after seeing the chief of the Hall of Souls in person, he realized just how terrifyingly strong he was. Even Xiaoyan felt that he did not have any chance of victory against such an expert. This person is a great enemy. Be careful. The smile on Ziyan's face by the side had disappeared. Her lovely body gently shifted half a step and coincidentally blocked half of Xiaoyan's body. She was the only one among those present who could block the chief of the Hall of Souls. Moreover, she understood that even if she fought him, she would be no match for him. The best result would be to retreat alone. Relax. They will not attack before obtaining the purifying demonic lotus flame. Xiaoyan shook his head and laughed. "Ha ha. Brother Xiaoyan, you have also come to join the fun." A loud and clear laugh was suddenly transmitted over from the distance while Xiaoyan was reassuring everyone. The rushing sound of wind immediately appeared as a couple of figures appeared beside him with lightning-like speed. Xiaoyan's eyes followed the rushing sound of wind. A stunned expression flashed across his eyes. He hurriedly headed over before he cupped his hands together and warmly smiled. "It is actually Brother Hu Xuan. It has been a long time since we last met. How are you?" There were 3 human figures who had appeared from the rushing wind. The person leading them was a handsome man with white clothes. That familiar face was that of a member from the Yan clan whom Xiaoyan had become acquainted with in the Gu realm, Ho Xuan. Beside him was the same red-clothed lady with a veil over her face. This time around, there was an additional purple-clothed old man with them. Brother Xiaoyan is indeed an extraordinary person. It has only been a short couple of years since we have last met, yet you have actually reached the Dosheng class. Huo Xuan cupped his hands to Xiaoyan as he praised. He had likely discovered Xiaoyan's current strength. Haha. Isn't Brother Huo Xuan also a high-level Bansheng? Xiaoyan slightly smiled. His heart was somewhat shocked. The speed at which Ho Xuan's strength was increasing was quite ferocious. Had Xiaoyan not consumed the Bodhisattva heart, it was likely that he would have been left far behind. Inside your body. Xiaoyan's eyes carefully observed Huo Xuan in front of him while he felt surprised. He let out a "huh" sound as he looked at the smiling Huo Xuan and asked, "You have refined a heavenly flame?" "With the help of the elders. I have luckily subdued the 8 wasteland destruction flame from the clan. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for my strength to soar by such an extent." Huo Xuan smiled and did not hide anything. The 8 wasteland destruction flame ranked 8th on the heavenly flame ranking. Xiaoyan's hand trembled. He was aware that the Yan clan possessed 4 types of heavenly flames. 2 among them were ranked in the top 10, but he had not expected the other flame. Besides the Red Lotus Yi flame, to actually be the 8 wasteland destruction flame. It is indeed worthy of being an ancient clan. It possesses such a collection. Xiaoyan was filled with envy within his heart. He had run all over the continent, but the highest-ranked heavenly flame he had obtained was merely ranked 9th, the 3,000 burning flame. It was unexpected that this Hu Xuan had obtained such a high-ranking heavenly flame after simply making a trip back. "Brother Xiaoyan, this is my Yan clan's elder Huo Yao. He also possesses a heavenly flame, but it is only ranked 16th, the Fire Cloud Water Flame." Huo Xuan pointed at the purple-clothed elder beside him and laughed. "Another heavenly flame?" Xiaoyan once again bitterly laughed upon hearing this. Putting it this way, the 3 people in front of him were carrying 3 types of heavenly flames from the Yan clan. If the 5 types of heavenly flames in him were included, would it not mean that a total of 8 types of heavenly flames were present? Haha. Xiaoyan ge, jie, there are more than 8 types. A clear chime-like voice suddenly rinto Xiaoyan's ear as though it was aware of Xiaoyan's thoughts. "Shun A joy immediately surged onto Xiaoyan's face the moment that bone-deep familiar voice was heard. Xiaoyan lifted his head, which was filled with joy. He saw an intense ripple appear within distant space before a couple of figures slowly surfaced. The person in front was wearing elegant green clothes and appeared as lovely as a flower. Her pretty face displayed a gentle smile. Her black hair was randomly restrained by a pale green ribbon. It fell down like a waterfall before spread across her delicate waist. A gentle breeze blew over, causing her hair to drift. Her demeanor appeared just like a fairy that had descended to the mortal realm. Who else could that extremely elegant demeanor belong to other than Jun whom Xiaoyan had not met for a long time? 2 people were following behind Jun One of them possessed a familiar face. It was Gu Qingyang, a genius within the Gu clan whose talent and bloodline was barely inferior to Shun The other person was extremely unfamiliar. He was a white-haired old man in blue robes. A warm smile was always maintained on his face. That smile gave one a friendly feeling, but only a person with strong eyesight could vaguely sense the sharpness hidden under that smile. The sudden appearance of Jun group immediately attracted many pairs of eyes. Numerous pairs of eyes swept over the trio before soft private conversations sprang up around them. The people and factions who could appear in this place were not ordinary people. They naturally understood that even though these ancient clans could truly be described as unparalleled super factions, even though they seemed to keep a low profile, the members of the Gu clan have indeed come. The deputy chief of the Hall of Souls frowned and softly spoke after Shun group appeared. The purifying demonic lotus flame is not an ordinary heavenly flame. Even our Hun clan desires it. It is only natural that the Gu clan has acted well. The eyes of the Hall of Souls chief swept once over those three, after which they paused on the blue-robed elder. Surprise flashed across his eyes as he spoke in a faint voice. Gunanhai, it is unexpected that the Gu clan has dispatched him this time around. Although Gunanhai is powerful, it should not be difficult to stop him with Hall Chief's strength. The junior clan head in black clothes lifted his eyes and said, "There is an agreement between our ancient clans. Those who are 5-star Dao Shengs and above cannot randomly intervene. The good thing is that the Hall Chief's strength is such that few people within this limit can beat you. Although those powerful individuals cannot intervene, they are definitely observing this place." The chief of the Hall of Souls laughed in a faint voice. He lifted his head and looked at empty space. It was as though there was someone lingering in that emptiness. "Xiaoyan Ge, you have finally become a Dou Sheng." The elegant girl stood in front of Xiaoyan. A warm smile also spread across his face as he looked at the girl's pretty smile. Gu Qingyang and the blue-robed elder by the side involuntarily shook their heads. They had never seen Jun this happy within the Gu clan. Something seemed to have hit the soft spot in Xiaoyan's heart as he looked at that ethereal-like girl in front of him. His thoughts, which had been suppressed, suddenly surged out from deep within his heart like floodwater. He immediately ignored the many pairs of eyes as he extended his hand to grab Shun soft long arm, after which he gently pulled and heavily hugged the beauty in front of him. The current Xiaoyan had truly grown, regardless of whether it was in age or strength. Xiaoyan's current achievements made him completely worthy of her, despite her being in possession of a divine bloodline that is seen only once in 1,000 years. Although Jun strength was not weaker than his, such a young 2-star Dao Sheng was someone even an ancient clan like the Gu clan could not underestimate. In other words, even if the current Xiaoyan were to head to the Gu clan to propose marriage, no one would dare to say that he was not qualified to do so. A gentle arc surfaced on Jun beautiful face after she was hugged by Xiaoyan. She gently leaned her face on Xiaoyan's shoulder as she somewhat greedily absorbed the familiar scent that she had not experienced for a long time. It had been 3 full years since they had last separated. Due to her being in possession of the Gu clan's divine bloodline, she could not randomly leave the Gu clan before she had become a Dou Sheng. She could only endure the bitter torture of missing Xiaoyan in her heart in order to protect the continuation of the bloodline. She had put all her effort into training in order to obtain the freedom that belonged to her after reaching that class. "Xiaoyan Jie, I have really missed you." Shana slightly turned her head. She looked at the side of Xiaoyan's face and curled her lips. A faint bewitchment surfaced on her elegant and beautiful face. Her mutter was quietly transmitted into Xiaoyan's ear. "Jun will be free in the future. I will continue to accompany you." She had grown up in the Xiao clan since young because of the Gu clan. She had also parted with Xiaoyan a long time ago because of the Gu clan. Each meeting with Xiaoyan was short and hurried because of the Gu clan. After each short meeting was year after year of waiting, she had gradually endured the days. From this moment on, she was finally able to arrange her time as she pleased. There was no need for her to be tightly managed by the Gu clan. Xiaoyan was startled upon hearing her words. He immediately smiled and nodded. "I'll say, the both of you aren't treating us as non-existent, are you?" Gu Qingyang by the side helplessly opened his mouth and spoke, while Xiaoyan and Shun were softly talking with each other. Shun face reddened after hearing Gu Qingyang's words. She quickly regained her composure and gently freed herself from Xiaoyan's embrace. After which, her pretty eyes landed on Yao Lao, who was behind Xiaoyan. She bowed to him as someone from the younger generation. "This must be Elder Yao Chen, right? Haha, little girl, we are acquainted with each other, but we have never met face to face." Yao also laughed. Shun had discovered him hiding on Xiaoyan a long time ago. At that time, she was unable to determine what his intentions were. Hence, she had even secretly warned him. But this was indeed the first time they had formally met. "Elder Yao Chen, please do not continue to keep what happened in the past in your heart." Shun was a little apologetic upon hearing Yao Lao's reply. She had suspected that Yao Lao harbored ill intent for Xiaoyan. Hence, her tone was a little impolite back then. But the subsequent events indicated that if Yao Lao had not secretly aided Xiaoyan, The route that Xiao Yan would have taken would have been much worse. Ha ha. It's a small matter. I'm Xiao Yan's teacher. It would really be inappropriate if I am not magnanimous to my disciple's wife. Yao Lao fondled his beard and loudly laughed. His heart felt some joy upon seeing a somewhat embarrassed expression surface on Juner's face. He naturally understood Juner's status within the Gu clan. Having someone of this status as his disciple's wife was something that would give him pride. Xiao Yan smiled, after which he introduced Ziyan by the side. Ziyan and Shun were acquaintances, having met each other at Jianan Academy back then, but Jun had subsequently left and the two of them did not meet each other again due to various reasons. Now that they had met again, they felt as though they had changed. After all, one had been a young girl in Jianan Academy, and the other had been a little girl who only knew how to play all day long. However, at this moment, the both of them possessed a peak strength on this continent. Xiaoyan Ge. This is Elder Gu Nanhai from my Gu clan. He is accompanying me to investigate the purifying demonic lotus flame this time around. Shun sweetly smiled and introduced the blue-robed old man behind her. Is the Gu clan also interested in the purifying demonic lotus flame? Xiao Yan's eyes looked at the blue-robed elder and felt shock within his heart. Although the feeling that this elder gave him was not as profound and unfathomable as the chief of the Hall of Souls, he was still much stronger than Ziyan. These ancient clans really possessed a strong foundation. It is not that we are interested in the purifying demonic lotus flame. It is likely that hardly anyone in this world can subdue that thing. It is fine as long as that flame does not land in the hands of the Hun clan. The blue-robed old man laughed. He did not try to show superiority through age. His tone was as though he was speaking to an equal and was extremely calm. He did not make things difficult for Xiao Yan like some elders from the Gu clan. The purifying demonic lotus flame has appeared in the past, but no one has managed to subdue it. The spatial seal present had been placed by the purifying demonic lotus saint. It is extremely mysterious. Even the purifying demonic lotus flame is not able to destroy it within a short amount of time. As long as it slows its attack by even a little, the seal will absorb the surrounding natural energy and repair itself before continuing to seal the flame. Jun grinned and explained, "The Hun clan, on the other hand, has always been targeting the purifying demonic lotus flame. They have always come prepared. I wonder just what they are planning to do this time around. They do not seem to be doing anything." Xiao Yan glanced at the trio from the Hall of Souls and commented, "They are waiting for the purifying demonic lotus flame to exhaust its strength from breaking the seal." Jun'er's eyes glanced at the man with black eyes among the trio from the Hall of Souls. She bunched her eyebrows as she softly said, "Xiaoyan Ge should be careful of that person. That person is called Hun Feng. Those from the Hun clan call him Madman. This Hun Feng has extremely shocking talent and possesses the divine bloodline of the Hun clan. He is many times stronger than that Hun Yu, whom you met back then. According to the information that we have gathered, he is likely going to be the next clan head of the Hun clan if no accidents occur. Hun Feng specializes in fighting the levels above him. Since he has begun training, he has seldom fought against those weaker than him. Moreover, he is ruthless and merciless in his attacks. Even when sparring in the clan, there are injuries and deaths when he fights. As more time passed, no one in the same generation dared to fight with him. Even some of the elders within the Hun clan are quite afraid of him. You should be exceptionally careful when fighting him this time around." Xiao Yan's brows twitched. His eyes drifted over that man called Hun Feng before slowly nodding his head. The next clan head of the Hun clan was extremely frightening. Just what were his chances of victory if he fought with this person?